This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning. Welcome to the Healthy Happens Here webinar series, a series of virtual webinars that cover a variety of health topics, including nutrition, mental health, tobacco cessation, and chronic disease self-management. My name is Robert Ward, and I'm a health educator with the Community Engagement Team with the Florida Department of Health in Miami-Dade County. My colleagues Brianna McDaniel and Candace Schottenlower are also joining me to assist today. Today's event is called Harvest Healthy Habits. We will be covering domestic violence and stroke prevention during our four presentations today. In addition, there will be a Q&A session with our presenters immediately following the presentations. Feel free to enter any questions you may have in the chat box to the upper right hand of your screen, and we will address as many as possible during the Q&A session. Just a few reminders. Please know that you have the capability to have your camera on and off and to mute and unmute your microphone. While you're not speaking, please remember to keep yourself muted. And again, if you have any questions throughout today's webinar, please add them to the chat box to the upper right hand of your screen, and we will address them during the Q&A session. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Elizabeth Baker from the Safe Space Foundation Miami, who will be covering the topic of domestic violence. Elizabeth Baker is a graduate of Boucher College, and she received her Juris Doctorate from the University of Maryland. She has been a divorce lawyer for over 40 years and is certified by the Florida Bar in marital and family law. She is rated as a super lawyer and is preeminent by Martindale-Hubbell. She has volunteered at the Safe Space Shelter since 1978 and is a past president and board member of the Safe Space Foundation, which supports the certified shelters for battered women in Miami-Dade County. I will now turn it over to Elizabeth.
Hi, it's great to be with you on this rainy morning in October, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. What I'd like to talk with you about today is domestic violence, which is generally intimate partner violence. It is a pervasive problem and a pervasive health problem in the United States. Depending on what statistics you're looking at, 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence in their lives. 1 in 10 men will. And a domestic violence assault occurs somewhere in the United States once every 7 to 9 seconds. This is one of the big underreported crimes. When you're looking at crime statistics and they give you staggering numbers about domestic violence, that represents about 10% of the problem, and the rest are initially unreported. And one of the difficulties with identifying victims of domestic violence is that they tend to underreport. So last year, I had a case where a woman told me that her husband came home drunk and he, quote, got belligerent. When we saw the tapes from the surveillance cameras that he had throughout the house, he punched her, he choked her, he picked her up and threw her against the wall. He chased her through the house and physically threw her out the back door. So that's an underreport of he got belligerent. And I don't really know why women do that, but you'll find people that say, my black eye came from falling down the stairs, or my broken arm came because I'm clumsy. So you kind of have to look at what you're seeing and not what the reporter is necessarily saying. The other difficulty with domestic violence is once a woman actually gets away, the level of danger goes way up. If you think back to the O.J. Simpson trial, you're going to remember that his ex-wife was killed with a companion long after they had separated. And the danger goes up in part because the aggressor is losing control and therefore finds it more and more anxiety producing. Because domestic violence at the bottom is really a power and control issue. The biggest single factor in predicting that someone will be guilty of domestic violence is that they saw domestic violence when they were a child. It's one of those behaviors that makes such a big impression. So whether you're looking for the economics to be a predictor, or drug abuse or alcoholism, it's actually being exposed to domestic violence as a child. And in the 40-something years that I've been working in domestic violence, we have had a lot of big changes. The laws have improved, the remedies have expanded, societal awareness has improved. But the problem and the size of it is incredibly persistent. The statistics have not been driven down. And I think it's possible that they can be driven down. You know, if you look at what it used to be to have drunk drivers, they used to be sort of smiled at and tolerated. And now society does not tolerate them. So we can change this problem, but we have not yet changed the problem. Domestic violence persists across economic, cultural, religious, and racial lines. Way back when I first started working in domestic violence, there was a long study about the incidence in domestic violence in Harlem, New York, and the incidence in Greenwich, Connecticut. At the time, those could not have been more different neighborhoods. Harlem was a slum, very poor, very overcrowded. Greenwich was probably the highest per capita income in the United States, a suburb with lots of advantages that were educational, cultural, recreational. The incidence of domestic violence was precisely exactly the same. And it's not a matter of education. I've had doctors, lawyers, accountants, CEOs, very competent people who are victims of domestic violence. It also has nothing to do with physical size. I've had great big women with little short men, and she's the victim. Of course, I've had it the other way around too. But it's a very slow process of learned helplessness on her part and power and control on his part. There's a cyclical nature to it, so that you often find immediately after a domestic violence assault that there is a honeymoon period where there are many promises of reform, many expressions of sorrow, many gestures to show that this is a behavior that the abuser is repudiating. And gradually, there is more and more of the old behavior creeping back in. Verbal threats, constant put downs, and the tension goes up so that it's a lot like having the household walk on eggshells. And then something, no matter how minor, sets off an explosion of violence. And there's a great deal of injury, trips to the hospital. When you look at emergency rooms, almost always a woman in the emergency room is there as a result of domestic violence. More than half of women emergency room admissions are domestic violence related. And they may be very likely to say something that minimizes the injury, minimizes the behavior, or denies that there's violence in the house. And victims of domestic violence are not necessarily good predictors. They will say things to you like, he would never hurt the children, but they're not good predictors, not good predictors for themselves, not good predictors for the children. And when you get to a scene of domestic violence, it's often true that it's the woman that's hurt. But as you read the newspaper every day, you see that sometimes it's the neighbor, sometimes it's the Good Samaritan, sometimes it's the child, sometimes it's the new partner of the woman. But it's a very dangerous situation, whether you're the policeman responding or the woman involved. One of the characteristics that you can almost always pick out about a victim of domestic violence is she has been very isolated. Her family doesn't talk to her. She doesn't have friends. She doesn't have a life apart from the abuser. And one of the mechanisms of control is to make sure that she is isolated and feels that no one will help her. And you may frequently find that she has made repeated ineffectual attempts to leave. So a really helpful thing for a woman is to give her some tools to effectively leave. There's a domestic violence hotline. There are shelters. There's an emergency plan that you can work out. For instance, pack a suitcase, have all your medicine, put the suitcase with a friend, a neighbor, or a family member so you'll have access to it. Make sure all your important papers are with you, because when you get tossed out of the house in the middle of the night with no keys, no money, no car, no nothing, the likelihood that you go back is greater, and the likelihood that you get injured is greater. The toll on domestic violence in the workplace is astonishing year to year. The numbers are staggering. With all this negative stuff, I also want to tell you, we have a lot of success stories. Women who get to the shelter often find the help they need. to take control of their lives and to get themselves and their kids back on a much better path. We had a domestic violence walk recently where we had a singer giving entertainment at the beginning. And before she sang, she said, I just have to tell you that I was a domestic violence victim. And I was at a shelter. And when I was so depressed, I couldn't get out of bed for the first 30 days I was there. I didn't even wash my face. To go from so far down that you can't move to being a very attractive, put together, competent entertainer when it's all over. It's transformations that we see often with a lot of success. So this is not a situation that we cannot address effectively. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz, for that great presentation. All right, we're going to switch to our second presentation today. We will be hearing from Indira Case from the American Heart Association, who will be covering breast cancer and stroke prevention. Indira is a native of Hershey, Pennsylvania, also known as the sweetest place on earth. She earned her bachelor's degree in psychology from Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia. During her undergraduate years, Indira spent the summer months at the University of Maryland involved in the UM-STAR program, where she was involved in a research study with a focus on colorectal, prostate, and breast cancer among older African Americans. Indira went on to pursue her master's degree in health advocacy from Sarah Lawrence College in Bronxville, New York. Upon completion of graduate school, Indira relocated to South Florida and has been with the American Heart Association since that time. She came to the American Heart Association in 2017 as a community impact director and has managed several initiatives focused on reducing hypertension rates in Broward and Miami-Dade counties, along with recruiting national partners for the AHA's quality improvement initiatives. Indira has a passion for working with communities of color to develop initiatives rooted in social justice to improve health outcomes and equity. Her passion for advocacy to provide better access to resources that improve health has been ignited by her personal experiences. I will now turn it over to Indira.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here with you all. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and to discuss chronic disease and stroke prevention, as well as breast cancer and its relation to heart disease. Next slide. So many of you are probably aware that World Stroke Day is October 29th, just 8 days away, and we wanted to highlight the importance of stroke and how it can be prevented and the symptoms which can differ between men and women. Stroke occurs when a blood vessel that carries oxygen and nutrients to the brain is either blocked by a clot or bursts or ruptures. The two main types of stroke are ischemic stroke, which is a blockage of a blood vessel, and hemorrhagic stroke, which is a rupture of a blood vessel in the brain. 1 in 4 people worldwide will have a stroke in their lifetime. Stroke does not discriminate anyone. It can happen to anyone regardless of their age or race and ethnicity. Women, as I mentioned, women and men may have different symptoms of stroke. That includes face drooping, arm weakness, speech, vision problems, trouble with coordination and walking, severe headache. And women can also experience general weakness, disorientation and confusion, memory problems, fatigue, nausea, or vomiting. As I mentioned, World Stroke Day is on October 29th, and the day underscores the serious nature and high rates of stroke, raise awareness of the prevention and treatment of the condition, and ensure better care and support for survivors. On this day, organizations around the world have facilitated events emphasizing education, testing, and initiatives to improve the damaging effects of stroke worldwide. This is an extremely debilitating disease, and the American Heart Association is hosting a One Cycle Nation Day to reach 1 million people worldwide who are engaging in physical activity like cycling, walking, or running on October 29th. Next slide, please. As I previously mentioned, there are several key or very popular warning signs or common warning signs of stroke. And we use, at the American Heart Association, we use the FAST acronym. I'm sure you all have heard it, but just to go through it one more time, that is face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. And once those three symptoms are occurring, then it is then time to call 911. It is very important that an individual who may be undergoing or having a stroke seeks emergency medical attention immediately. The American Heart Association has worked with hospitals and emergency medical responders to develop best protocols and practices when picking up an individual who may be experiencing a stroke and transporting them to the hospital or to the emergency room. A lot of EMS ambulances have the capability to begin the treatment for a stroke in the ambulance itself, and they're able to do a CT scan, and they're able to then communicate with the doctors at the hospital. So once the individual gets to the hospital, the doctors are able to provide the best treatment depending on what type of stroke the individual is having. Next slide. So we also wanted to talk about how can we prevent stroke. We mentioned that 1 in 4 people worldwide may experience a stroke in their lifetime. And one of those ways in how we can prevent stroke is committing to making small lifestyle changes. One being high blood pressure and making sure that you're controlling your blood pressure rates. High blood pressure is the number 1 preventable risk factor for stroke. If your provider identifies that you have a high blood pressure, which is anything over 130 to 139 systolic blood pressure or 80 to 89 diastolic blood pressure, your doctor will help work with you on how to monitor and make lifestyle changes. So at the American Heart Association, some of the things that we recommend for individuals who have been diagnosed with hypertension is we recommend that they have a blood pressure monitor at home so that they can do readings in the beginning of the day and then the afternoon, and while they're taking medication, so that they can identify perhaps what times of the day or perhaps what triggers there are that increase blood pressure to help individuals then get their blood pressure under control. We also recommend that there are specific treatment protocols in terms of medication that are widely used and widely effective amongst diverse populations of people that doctors prescribe to individuals who have hypertension, as well as other lifestyle changes like having a healthy diet and also engaging in physical activity regularly. Another lifestyle change that we can all be committed to is reducing our risk of diabetes. Diabetes more than doubles one's risk of stroke, and your provider will help manage that condition. So again, diabetes is heavily related to food and intake and the body's ability to control blood sugar. And the last one would be checking your cholesterol levels. High levels of cholesterol increases the risk of blocked arteries. If an artery leading to the brain becomes blocked or develops a clot, a stroke can occur. It's important to get cholesterol under control. So when you have high levels of cholesterol, it creates plaque in the blood vessels, and that creates a difficulty for the blood to move throughout the blood vessels to ensure that blood is getting to and from the brain. And then if the cholesterol then bursts, if the plaque builds up and then bursts or ruptures the blood vessel, that also can cause a stroke. And I previously also mentioned that diet change is extremely important. So a diet high in saturated fats, trans fats, cholesterol, and sodium can increase blood pressure, as well as another lifestyle habit, which is smoking, that damages blood vessels, leading to blockages and stroke as well. Next slide. Also in October is breast cancer awareness, and I imagine that we all have been impacted by this disease, this devastating disease, whether it be ourselves personally or someone that we know. And we wanted to bring some awareness too around breast cancer and the importance of being aware of how to prevent it and the risks, as well as its correlation to heart disease. As of today, around 3 million American women are survivors of breast cancer. Breast cancer is more prevalent in women between ages 40 to 45, but very rarely can occur also in men. The National Breast Cancer Foundation claims that 1 in 8 women in the United States will be diagnosed with breast cancer in her lifetime. And breast cancer is the most common cancer in American women except for skin cancers. And on average, every 2 minutes, a woman is diagnosed with breast cancer in the United States. Next slide. So there's no sure way to prevent breast cancer. However, there are things that you can do that might help lower your risk. Many risk factors are beyond our control, such as genetics and being born a woman, and also age. Some factors that you can do to lower your risk is being at a healthy weight, engaging in physical activity, and not using alcohol or tobacco products in an excessive way. Also, it is important for early detection. So individuals it is recommended that women and men schedule routine annual breast exams with a physician. Also, women are encouraged to give themselves regular monthly breast exams and to look for symptoms of breast cancer like lumps in the breast, bloody discharge, changes in the shape or texture of the anatomy of the breast. And women who are at high risk for breast cancer on certain factors should get a breast MRI and a mammogram every year, typically starting at the age of 30. And high-risk women are considered to have a BRCA1 or BRCA2 gene mutation, and that would be confirmed via genetic testing, or have a first-degree relative, a parent, brother, sister, or child with a BRCA1 or BRCA2 gene mutation and have not had genetic testing themselves. Breast cancer and heart disease share many risk factors, including age, tobacco use, diet, obesity, and sedentary lifestyle. So there is a relation between the two, and in the next slide, I will go ahead and talk more about that. Next slide, please. Breast cancer and heart disease, how are they related? I previously mentioned that 3 million American women are survivors of breast cancer. Heart disease is the #1 killer of women and can sometimes be a complication of breast cancer treatment. Cancer can directly cause heart problems such as fluid buildup around the heart. In addition, radiation therapy for breast cancer can lead to blocked arteries, hypertension, arrhythmia, and valvular disease in some patients. Chemotherapy and other cancer treatments can weaken the heart, which leads to blood clots and high blood pressure. Once breast cancer is diagnosed, experts recommend factoring heart health into decisions about treatment to minimize risk and monitoring the cardiovascular system every step of the way. Next slide, please. If you have high blood pressure, your heart has to work harder to get blood into the arteries. So we'll just talk a little bit about the medical and biomedical factors of hypertension and breast cancer. Stroke. So high blood pressure can cause stroke, which damages the arteries that burst or clog easily. And high blood pressure increases your stroke by 4 to 6 times. Heart failure. Blood pressure can also cause heart failure, which causes the heart to enlarge and fail to supply the blood to the body. It can also impact vision loss. It can strain the vessels in the eyes, again, because those are blood vessels. And if you have high blood pressure, there usually a lot of individuals who have hypertension also report having headaches and pain behind their eyes because those blood vessels, there's tension on those blood vessels, and there's a lot of pressure going through them to get the blood flowing. Blood pressure can also impact heart attack. That is caused by damages to the arteries when they become blocked, and 69% of people who have a first heart attack has high blood pressure. It can also cause kidney disease and failure if hypertension is not treated or controlled accurately or appropriately. This causes arteries around the kidneys to narrow, weaken, or harden, so the kidneys lose their ability to filter blood in and out of the kidneys. It can also impact breast cancer, studies have shown that women with high blood pressure have about a 15% increased risk of developing breast cancer. I'm sorry, I keep switching those up, compared to women with normal blood pressure. By keeping your blood pressure in a healthy range, you're reducing your risk of the walls of your blood vessels, walls becoming overstretched and injured. And you're also reducing your risk of having a heart attack or stroke and developing heart failure, kidney failure, and breast cancer. Protecting your entire body so that your tissues receive regular supplies of blood that is rich in the oxygen it needs. And I will mention that the American Heart Association recommends a regular normal blood pressure being anything under 120/80. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, there are several lifestyle changes that we can all engage in to prevent breast cancer and heart disease. We previously mentioned those. Again, just to reiterate, heart disease and breast cancer share some of those same risk factors like age, tobacco use, obesity, physical activity, and diet. So lifestyle measures can help prevent both. Data shows that exercise and a balanced diet is good for both heart and breast cancer health. But a healthy diet may provide backup to the immune system, preventing the pre-malignant cells from getting the extra energy to turn into malignant cells. The excess energy also affects other processes such as inflammation and fat metabolism, which may play a role in heart disease. Next slide, please. Several years ago, the American Heart Association and several of its chief medical officers in the public health field developed a scientific statement to advise the public and medical doctors on how to reduce heart-related complications due to breast cancer treatments. And it states, improvements in early detection and treatment of breast cancer can have led to an increasing number of breast cancer survivors who are at risk of long-term cardiac complications from cancer treatments. Although cardiology and oncology are often considered separate medical fields, they are frequently intertwined. Multidisciplinary care is critical in the management of cancer patients. And so the American Heart Association really encourages medical doctors to look at the individual holistically and comprehensively. So if an individual has engaging in chemotherapy treatments for breast cancer and perhaps may have hypertension or maybe at risk for heart disease, they encourage the oncology and cardiology doctors to work together to develop a treatment plan that will best meet the needs of the patient, not only in the short term in terms of treating and curing the cancer, but also then to ensure and promote heart health as well. And there is a video. Are we able to play that? Thank you. Thank you. And I just wanted to add that heart.org has plenty of free resources, additional information, and please also visit our website to engage with us locally. We have several virtual events coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Indira. Our third presenter is Lacey Boyles, who will be covering nutrition and stroke prevention today. Lacey is a Community Impact Director at the American Heart Association. She's a Florida native, born and raised in Gainesville, Florida. She attended the University of North Florida, where she earned her Bachelor's of Science degree in Nutrition and Dietetics. She also earned her Master's degree in Public Health from Benedictine University. Her professional background includes nutrition, disease prevention, health promotion, and pediatric research. Before coming to AHA, she was employed at the University of Maryland School of Medicine as a research project coordinator / senior research analysis. While employed there, she managed the operations of the Children's Health Watch research under the principal investigator, Dr. Maureen Black. Correspondingly, she also managed the operations of the Pediatrics Growth and Nutrition Clinic, where she provided nutritional guidance and advice to parental guardians of failure to thrive children. Some of her past employment includes Johns Hopkins University, Maryland Hunger Solutions, and the University of Maryland School of Medicine. She is the third author in the Feeding Baltimore's Children, the Impact of Community Eligibility Provision on Household Food Security. I will now turn it over to Lacey.
Thank you, Robert, for the introductions. Hi, good morning. I will be discussing nutrition and how dietary factors play an important role in chronic disease. Next slide, please. So, women have been reported to be more impacted by chronic disease. For example, cardiovascular disease kills one about every 80 seconds. This association is likely in today's world, where women are juggling careers, their families, safety and health, school scheduling, virtual learning, daily errands, and so much more. They give and give, often at health expense. This contributes to why more women die of heart disease and stroke than any other condition. We know that there are many factors that contribute to chronic disease, including pre-existing conditions and family history. However, healthy foods contribute to well-being, chronic disease prevention, and healthy life expectancies. There is a looming nutrition crisis driving increased rates of chronic disease, such as type 2 diabetes, cancer, heart disease, stroke, overweight, obesity, cardiovascular disease, and high blood pressure. Furthermore, nutrition does not just impact women, it also impacts men and children. About 1 in 5 teenagers in the US are now pre-diabetic, and 20% to 50% of patients admitted to the hospital suffer from malnutrition, impacting risk and length of stay. Next slide, please. So a diet high in saturated fats, trans fats, and cholesterol can raise blood pressure levels. Sodium, such as salt, can increase blood pressure, as well as high-calorie diets can lead to obesity. Also, being vitamin and mineral deficient and selecting poor food choices can contribute to dietary factors that contribute to chronic disease. Next slide, please. High calories and low nutrients is also associated with junk food, processed food, and fast food meals. Lethargy and boredom can become a lethal combination regarding eating behaviors and a healthy immune system. Refined sugars and bleached flours are also associated to affect the nervous system negatively and increase heart rate and blood pressure. Many of these substances mentioned are often found in the comfort foods people use to pacify their stress, which confuses the body and ultimately doing more harm than good. So, is there a relationship between stress and food? Yes, absolutely. With some exceptions, we may eat because we're hungry, but the second reason topping the list is that food soothes our emotions. A sobering statistic suggests that as much as 85% of all disease and illness is stress related. Everything from common cold to cancer, more than just an association, stress is now recognized to have a direct causal link, as it turns out that the stress hormone cortisol destroys white blood cells. And while emotional stress, including unresolved anger and fear, certainly plays a pivotal role in one's physical health, it also appears to play a significant role in poor eating behaviors, hence setting the stage for serious chronic health problems. Next slide, please. All micronutrients are extremely important for the proper functionings of the body. Very low dietary intake of a vitamin or a nutritionally essential mineral can result into deficiency disease. Micronutrients are needed in smaller amounts, but still enable important functions of the body. Deficiency in these can contribute to infections and associated with severe illness and death. Important microminerals include iron, manganese, copper, zinc, iodine, fluoride, and selenium. Vitamins are another important micronutrients that offer a range of health benefits, including boosting the immune system, helping prevent or delay certain cancers, helping the body metabolize proteins and carbs, supporting healthy blood, and aiding brain and nervous system functioning. These vitamins include vitamin C and vitamin B complex. When these vitamins and micronutrients run low, fatigue sets in. If they remain low, some physiological symptoms such as the reproductive, immune, endocrine, and respiratory become compromised. Next slide, please. So the impact of nutrition security during the COVID-19 crisis. Nutrition security emphasizes the importance of essential nutrients. And adequate nutrition security requires the intake of a wide range of foods, which provides essential needed nutrients. Reports have shown that 87% of people admitted to intensive care units for life-saving treatment of COVID-19 suffer from diet-related chronic disease. Counties with the highest rate of food insecurity also have the highest prevalence of diabetes, obesity, and a person with some form of disability. COVID-19 has amplified the associated risk of nutrition insecurity and disease. We are noticing cities with the highest rate of food insecurity have higher reported cases of COVID-19. The mineral selenium is a necessary mineral needed for the body for immune system health. Reports have shown that deficiency in selenium are associated with lower rates of recovery from COVID-19. Research has also linked low blood cells of selenium to higher risk of heart disease. Recent medical studies found that the risk of heart disease decreased by 24% when blood concentrations of selenium was increased by 50%. Next slide, please. So how can we improve our nutritional health? What can we do to slow down, tune in, boost our immune system? While there are many ideas and suggestions, here are some of the simpler things that you can do to bring balance back into your life, one step at a time. First, see your physician, get an annual checkup. Check your vitamins and minerals. Find out if you're deficient. This can be done by having your blood drawn. It's important to check to see if you have, it's also important to check to see if you have too much of a vitamin or mineral. Too much can result into feeling fatigue, and it can also cause damage to organs. Second, eat at least one meal a day for your immune system, whether it be breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Eat at least one healthy meal that is packed with nutrients that support a healthy immune system. Fruits and vegetables are a great source of these nutrients, as are legumes. Eating a variety of food is also an essential aspect of supporting the immune system, as the accumulation of toxins is the greatest when eating the same foods over and over again. Research reveals that over half Americans who eat research reveals that over half Americans eat 2 of the 3 meals outside of the home, and those that are cooked at home are most likely processed and prepackaged. Refined sugars, bleached flours, salt, and fats of questionable origin continue to top the list of dietary taboos, but these are the main ingredients that large portions of Americans eat today when they dine out. Sadly, when asked why so many people eat out rather than cook at home, many answer that after working a long day, they're just too tired. Still others say they are simply too bored with preparing the same meals. Try compiling a list of 7 to 10 simple yet tasty meals that you can plan at home or cook at a friend's house. Third, try eliminating sugar. Some studies show that refined sugar decreases white blood cell count. This may explain why colds and flus are so common during the holidays when foods are high in refined sugar and are abundant. The best health approach is try to dramatically limit the intake of refined sugar. This may be hard at first, as are most habits. If stopped altogether, it is hard. Try reducing the intake each day. Your pancreas and immune system will thank you. You may also see a dramatic loss in body weight as well. Fourth, use fresh ingredients such as vegetables, fruits, and herbs. Make your plate colorful, packed with nutrients. Fresh herbs contain essential oils that promote the immune system, such as oregano, rosemary, turmeric, cumin, and garlic. Not only make any meal taste better, but they even the score with unwelcome pathogens. Many spices and herbs are considered antibacterial, meaning that they enhance the immune system. The skin. Your mouth isn't the only portal through which you intake nutrients into your body. Your skin is the largest organ on your body. Sunlight is used to synthesize vitamin D as it reacts with cholesterol in your cell membranes, assuming you get enough sunlight. Deodorants, hand lotions, body lotions, sunblock, makeup, lip balm found a vast array of substances that blend into the body through the skin. Many of these synthetic chemicals that are foreign to the body are considered pathogens. And as the saying goes, don't put anything on your skin that you wouldn't put in your mouth and swallow. Sixth, increase water intake. The body requires hydration. The best hydration is water. A well-hydrated body helps to flush out toxins circulating in the body. 7, eliminating caffeine consumption. Caffeine will trigger the stress alarm in your body. If you're feeling stressed, this is the substance to avoid. Remember that decaf does not mean caffeine-free. It simply means less caffeine and regular caffeinated coffee. Remember too that sodas contain caffeine, as do black teas. Avoid energy drinks altogether. Consider reducing your consumption of caffeine up to 1 cup of coffee up to 1 cup a day. 8, read nutrition labels. Make it a habit to compare nutrition labels. Choose products with the lowest amount of sodium, added sugar, saturated fats, and trans fats that you can find in the store. When buying canned or dried frozen vegetables and fruit, be sure to compare food labels and choose the product with the lowest amount of sodium and added sugar. Also pay attention to serving size. And finally, most important, meditate and think before you eat. If you want to put healthier eating habits on the menu, mindfulness may be a simple and effective place to start. It's not all about dieting or restriction. It's also about trying to take a moment to take everything in. Try to incorporate mindful eating into your day so you can eat smart at every meal. Check with yourself about your hunger before you eat. You may actually be thirsty or bored. Slow down so your brain can keep up with your stomach. Put your fork down in between bites and focus on the flavor. Take a walk in between second servings. You may find that you're completely satisfied. And stop when you're full. There's no need to clean your plate. This one was hard for me. I grew up with my mom enforcing the clean your plate rule, and it took me a long time to break this habit. Feeling like I needed to clean my plate resulted into me feeling overly full, and sometimes that's just not the best feeling. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lacey. Our next presenter is Celia Morales, who will be presenting on mental health for families. Celia is a program coordinator with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI. Celia has been a Miami volunteer since February 2020 and then recently joined the team as a program coordinator. She also volunteers as an Ending the Silence for Families NAMI presenter. She is also a trained family support group facilitator for parents and caregivers of youth and young adults. She sought support and resources from NAMI when her oldest child began to show symptoms of mental health struggles in 2009. Celia is a native Floridian who loves her family, pets, and community. She also enjoys cooking and exploring the culinary wonders Miami has to offer. I will now turn it over to Celia.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning, and thank you to all the presenters for the valuable information that they've presented today. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to be discussing our Ending the Silence for Families program. And I first and foremost want to say that I am not a clinician, so the information that I provide today would be from a perspective of a parent and a caregiver, and also someone who has gone through the process of learning to live with and care for a child with a mental health issue. I have 5 children. I have a range of them that have different mental health issues with different levels of impairment. My oldest was diagnosed with bipolar 2 back 6 years ago. That was a very difficult experience. After that, part of it probably because of the trauma of everything we've been through. Some of our other children began to experience certain issues, ranging from anxiety to depression to post-traumatic stress, and we've dealt with all of that. So first and foremost, I want to make sure that I'm speaking from experience, and the information that I'm trying to get out there is the importance of intervention, the importance of resources, the importance of opening a safe space and beginning the conversation. Next slide. So as we all know, mental health affects every facet of our life, from physical health to our ability to have interpersonal relationships, to being able to succeed in our careers as students, developmental milestones, all of that. And I always like to mention this, that my first experience with a mental health issue with one of my kids was my son was 3 years old, and he was having major tantrums at school. And it took us about a couple of years of going back and forth and getting developmental evaluations and so forth to realize that he had a pretty bad anxiety disorder, even at such a young age. And I like to mention that because for a lot of us, I think mental illness kind of looks at something that is as an adult or an older child, but really sometimes even little ones are really struggling with this. Next slide. I know that there's been a lot of information out there regarding the statistics and all the mental health issues that our youth are having, and we could probably do a whole webinar based on the social media and the different social components that are really affecting our youth today. But the statistics are there. The statistics show that our youth are in dire need of mental health services, mental health support, and that so many are going without treatment. And it's amazing how many people are really not understanding that our youth is really struggling. Next slide. So what I want to focus on are the 4 steps for early intervention. We're going to go through each one of them very briefly. First, it's knowing the warning signs. Oftentimes, many of us, and I don't want to say only parents, because I think parents, teachers, or any adult that is in relating with kids needs to understand what the warning signs might be. The second one is going to be to reach out and respond. We have to sometimes create the space and begin the conversation, and it may not happen that day, but we begin to allow for that possibility to be there. The third one is going to be to work with school staff and your child. School and the staff at the school have such a different perspective, and your kids spend such a big part of their day there, that it's an invaluable team effort that can really make a big difference. And again, NAMI is very much focused on providing resources and support, and that for me was a critical piece at being able to become more effective and to have a better quality of life for myself. Next slide, please. So I like to say that the warning signs really have to do with the intensity. So how How intense are the feelings that they're having? How severe are the symptoms that they're going through? How significant is it a change in their personality? The duration, is he having a bad day? Is it a bad week? Is it a bad year? Uh, is it something that you've been seeing for a while? Level of distress is how much do they impair daily function? So I think that this is critical because I know that when my daughter, she was 16 years old, when she really started to kind of unravel, she was a junior in high school. And I remember going to doctor after doctor after doctor, and what I wanted was the diagnosis. And in hindsight and in retrospect, I think if I had focused on the severity of the symptoms and the impairment for her quality of life, I think I would have had a good opportunity there to do better. I've been able to apply the lessons that I learned with my other children, and having gone through the process, I think it's critical to allow the process to be more about how their condition is affecting them and impairing them in their daily life and in the goals for them to succeed their happiness. Next slide. So this is always a very difficult subject, and this has to do specifically with suicide. 17% of high school students will seriously consider suicide, and that's even higher in the LGB community. We don't cover transgender in this particular presentation because we're still aggregating the data, and we won't put out a presentation that is not backed up by the data. I personally have had one of my kids who tried to overdose a couple of years ago, and I remember that it was the word suicide was just something I couldn't say. And I think it's very important to allow the space to have those conversations. And I know they're very, very difficult, but we can't be afraid of it. We have to kind of allow them to say, you're feeling bad, and I want to be here, and I want to support you. And are you thinking about suicide? And if they are, we don't leave them alone. Talking about it, mentioning it is not going to encourage them to do anything. It's more about allowing them to understand that there's someone there that isn't going to judge them and is okay to offer support. It's very important to seek immediate help. Sometimes we don't know what kind of crisis we're confronted, and as parents and as caregivers, we're not qualified to give that level of care at that time. The most important thing is to be there, to not leave them alone, and to get appropriate care for them. And that could be going to the hospital. It could be calling a crisis team, whatever it is you need to do in order to keep them safe. Next slide. And it's very important to talk to your child, talk to their friends, make those connections, create that space in order for us to create a level of comfort with our kids communicating with us, their friends communicating with us. We need to show up, we need to care, and we need to listen. And we need to talk because those moments of crisis, those moments when they're feeling down, there has to be a foundation of trust, and that takes time. And that's why talking is such a critical piece, and investing in those relationships and investing in those times. Because sometimes it's hard when your child is struggling and somebody has a mental health issue. Sometimes they struggle with the intimate part of that. But we need to work at talking to them. And it's not only about their medical condition, and it's not just about how it's affecting their life. It's talking about their goals, their dreams, everything that they want to accomplish, everything you want to accomplish, everything that we as individuals all have a journey, and we're all learning along the way. School staff is also critically important. because we cannot expect the school staff to know what's going on with our kids if we don't tell them, if we don't add them to our list of partners. At the end of the day, it's extra eyes on our kids. And if the teacher knows that they're struggling, then the teacher can take a look, be mindful. But if not, how are they supposed to know? And also that allows the teachers and the school staff, the counselors, even the cafeteria people knew my kids. And they were aware of that they were struggling. And it was more adults that showed support, that showed interest, and were invested in my kids. And they knew that they were loved and nurtured. So that's really also a very important piece, because then also the school will know that you're willing to listen and that you're trying to work with them. And healthcare professionals as well. Healthcare professionals do the best that they can, but really they see sometimes our kids and it's just a brief snapshot for their physical or because they're sick. But at the same time, we as caregivers and parents, we need to engage them and say, hey, something might be going on. This is what I've noticed. And having those conversations are critical. And I have to say that in my experience, our pediatrician was able to have some very difficult conversations with a couple of my kids, and they were comfortable speaking to him more than they were to me. And I was ever so grateful for that. Next slide, please. So here is just a few samples of how to start the conversation. And they're just ways of engaging. Tell me what's going on. How are you feeling? Tell me what happened. Help me understand. And I think not only is it us starting the conversation, but it's also letting them see us in struggle and acknowledging, today I had a really tough day. Today this happened. I had an argument with my boss. I, missed a deadline. I forgot a presentation or whatever it is, because we can't expect our children to be merciful with themselves if we are not merciful for us, and they see us living what we're trying to tell them that we ask them to do. We ask them to be gentle on themselves. We need to be gentle on ourselves as well, and allow them to see that we're not perfect. If all they see is mom and dad or so and so is superhuman, that then is an unrealistic expectation, because we all know that there's moments where we feel down. Next slide. When talking to school staff, I think it's critically important to be there the first day of school, open house, get the teacher's email, make sure that you contact them. You make sure that you're looking at progress reports, at report cards, understand the services that your child might be entitled to. Maybe they do need a behavioral improvement plan. Maybe they do need a 504 plan. Maybe they do need an individualized education plan. But the only way you get to that is sharing your concern, establishing a form of communication, and asking the teacher if there's any classroom adjustments that your child in particular has responded well to, or that the teacher would suggest. Next slide, please. So in particular with this one, I like to say is always have an open dialogue with the healthcare professionals, and that could be a physician, it could be a therapist, it could be a behavioral therapist, whoever it is. Share your concerns. I think it's critical, and I know that I fought it tooth and nail for quite some time, but I journal. And I keep a journal of behaviors that are both positive, that show growth, and also that are concerning, that show maybe that my child is struggling in a certain area. And don't be afraid to ask if an evaluation is needed. Evaluations are exceptional tools to provide pieces to the puzzle to do what we can do to give our kids a better opportunity to help improve them. And again, like statistics show, early intervention really does make a huge impact on the outcome. Ask for referrals. Ask, who have you sent your patients to? Who have been happy? Who has been successful? Who would you recommend? They know the healthcare professionals out there. They work with them. So if they're working with them and they're comfortable referring to them, it's going to be easier to facilitate the communication so that everyone, again, is working on the same team. And the most important thing, I think, is educating yourself on mental health, educating yourself on emotional regulation, educating yourself on communication. Those are critical pieces, and not only for dealing with a child that's struggling, but just in general and in life, because it's easy to have a relationship when it's natural, but sometimes there is definitely a struggle to communicate with everyone. And this is no different. Next slide, please. So again, here it's, I can't emphasize enough to work with the school staff and your child, and let your child know that you're working, that you're going to, let the teachers know, and ask your child ahead of time, listen, I want to have a conversation with your teacher. What are you comfortable with me sharing? So that they don't feel like you're going behind their back and that there's a barrier of trust. And it's very important for them to understand that we're looking for ways to collaborate together. Children need to feel like there's a certain amount of control that they have. And everybody has a right to privacy. Everybody has a right to feel safe. And we as caregivers and parents need to have that ability to ask them, say, what are you comfortable sharing? I think that's a very critical piece. And again, there's services and support that are there. So it's definitely very important. Like Helen Keller says, by ourselves we do so little, together we can do so much. So that is critical. Next slide, please. There you go. 100%, it's true. I can tell you from personal experience that when I started, my oldest now is 25, my youngest is 15. And when I started this journey with my daughter, who's now 25, I carried a lot of shame. I wanted to do everything. I wanted to keep it in the dark. I wanted not for people to realize that something was going on, that she was struggling, and that it was going to be different. And that was about me, really not about her. And I have to say, my 15-year-old also suffers from major depression and an eating disorder. And it's been very difficult. Her case has been a lot more emotional and a lot more unstable than my oldest. But this time around, I'm okay talking about it. I'm okay looking for resources. I'm okay not being her only go-to person. I've been able to count on others. And that's, I think, is a very critical piece to why she's still here. Next slide, please. So resilience and well-being. Resilience is one of those things that we hear, and we want to raise resilient children. We want to be resilient, and resilience comes from falling and getting up. And we can't always not allow our children to fall, just like we fall, but we have to allow them to. Can we allow them to get up? Can we allow them to see us fall and get up? Can we sit with them and let them see us cry? all of these things and getting through difficult times together as an individual and sharing your struggles, that's how we build resilience. It's all about the confidence in the ability to get through things. That this moment, as terrible as it is, will pass. And well-being, it's important to understand what that looks like. Kids, we need to teach our kids that friendships, connections are important, that empathy, understanding, being able to sit in someone's shoes is so critical to real lasting connections, and that we need to set goals, and those goals may be for my daughter today, her goal might be to get up out of bed, because she suffers from depression, and that's okay. And so a lot of times what I've learned is that especially one of my kids is very good about having grandiose goals, big goals. But then what ends up happening is that there's so many little things along the way that they need to accomplish that then all of a sudden that goal just doesn't seem attainable because they burn out. So it's important to teach them to set short-term and long-term goals. And it's helpful to go through that process with them, and it's good for us as well. Kids needs to thrive on routine. They need to know what to expect. Safe, security, belonging is so important. And it's also important to just to be present, not to have an agenda, not to have a schedule, to just sit down and chat and have a conversation and go for a walk. That those unstructured times are so important because that's a way of us regenerating our energy. And also it's important for them to learn to have a positive self-view. It's not a perfect view. We're not expected to be perfect, but we're working. Each and every one of us is a work in progress, and a positive self-view allows them to be gentle with themselves and understand that there's a lot of positives and there's always opportunity for growth, and to see the good things in life, right? We will all go through rough times. Change is a constant part of life, and when you have someone who struggles with mental health issues, that is definitely very difficult. They Change is hard. Change is hard for anyone, and it's also important for them to realize. And I think the best way to do that is to do that together. Is to show them by example that it feels great to help others. That it's not only about what we can take, but it's also about what we can give. Next slide, please. And connect with resources and support I think, is just one of the most critical things that we can do. Next slide, please. So one of the things that NAMI does is we do have a plethora of services and programs that we do. All our programs are free of charge. All of our support groups are virtual right now. We're in the process. We'll begin some of our programs are already online. And we not only provide services for individuals, but we also for individuals suffering from mental health issues, but also for their family members. Because a lot of what the process is for us as parents and caregivers and loved ones of those struggling with a mental health issue is how do we take control over ourselves and realize that we can't control others. And that goes along the whole gamut of things. And it's very important to share your story, create the space, have the conversation, because no one should suffer in silence. And we are here to help. And we will try to continue to create awareness, create a space, and eliminate the stigma, because people with mental health issues are hurting, and so are those who care for them. And next slide. Anything we can do, we're here to help. and any resources that you guys want to provide us, and we can provide resources as well. We're here. I will go ahead. I think we'll share my email, anything I can do, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Celia, and a big thank you to all our presenters. So at this point, we're going to start our Q&A session. And just a reminder, you can enter your questions in the upper right-hand corner in the chat box. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Brianna now, who will be moderating the Q&A session.
Thank you, Robert. So we have a few questions that were submitted to us before the presentations. So the very first couple of questions that we have is actually for Elizabeth Baker. So the first few questions is, how can we help a friend or a loved one who may be experiencing domestic violence? And how can we empower a victim that wants to get out of the relationship or situation?
So one of the consistently successful things to do is to be there and to state your point of view that you're not agreeing with what you see, but don't withdraw your support. That is what the abuser is counting on. If they knock on your door at 3 a.m., let them in, because they wouldn't be doing that if they didn't need your help. The one way to isolate a domestic violence victim is to make those attempts to get away unsuccessful. And that involves lots of bad things like stalking, threatening. So when something like that is happening, I always call the police, because it helps to have police reports when eventually you successfully get away. So don't take on something that is dangerous, but be accepting and willing to help. Even if you gave them $50 last month and they didn't get away, you have to keep at it. It's a persistent problem. You need to be persistent.
Thank you so much. So the next question that we have, these two are for Lacey. The first one is, how do I deal with food anxiety? And how do I deal with celiac disease at work?
Hi, yes, thank you for the question. So this is a common question I hear a lot in individuals who have been diagnosed with IBS, celiac, or some other form of eating disorder, of how to deal with food anxiety. Many individuals can be diagnosed with, it's called avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, which is a new form of disorder classification. It's used to describe individuals who eat very little food or avoid eating most food, and they just become overwhelmed by anxiety and fear about a particular meal. So some tips that we can try to do to prevent some anxiety would be, one, follow up with a physician, see if there's any underlying condition that's causing any GI pain or anxiety in general. Also slow down when eating. I'm guilty of this. I've always been a fast eater, and sometimes I forget to eat when I forget to breathe when I eat. And, you know, it goes back to, you know, my college days where I was working and serving through college, and, you know, in between tables, I would try to get a meal in, and, you know, a lot of times that will, I feel like I just need to eat fast. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, especially like working or having children. So just making sure that we have time to enjoy our meals, putting our fork down in between bites, and really just taking it in. Another thing is, you know, maybe doing nutrition counseling, you know, maybe make an appointment with a registered dietitian that's trained with anxiety eating and can help you guide you through eating plans that make you feel good and help keep you healthy. So yeah.
Thank you so much. We actually have another question for you, and it says, do you have any tips or recommendations on how to deal with not enough sleep?
Yeah, of course. So I think we all have issues with this. You know, it's such a busy lifestyle that a lot of people live. One is to make sure that we're not skipping meals. So, you know, making sure we have a well-balanced meal, you know, during the night, at least a couple of hours before we sleep. Making sure that we're getting plenty of exercise during the day, and also just doing some type of meditation and just stretching and just taking some time for us to relax. If we're not able, I know we have such busy schedules and we try to pack in as much as possible within a day. We're not doing ourselves good. We're not doing anyone else good unless we take care of ourselves. And so I think that's one thing that we really need to stress with a lot of individuals is, you know, we need to make sure that we're healthy and happy so we can be the best person to our kids, do the best performance at work. So really taking that time to make sure that we have, you know, enough sleep and that we're getting enough nutrients in our diet.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was a great answer. The next set of questions are for Indira. So the very first question we have is, how much does being overweight factor into one's risk of developing breast cancer?
The question was, how does being overweight impact? So I'm not a medical clinician or a medical provider. So with the limited knowledge that I have, though, is I think that there's a correlation between the development of the malignant cells and their ability to replicate and then spread throughout the body. And I think that is related to the amount of consumption in terms of energy through food. And also, so perhaps an individual who may be overweight may be consuming more than the recommended calorie intake. And so I believe that is the correlation between the amount of energy that is consumed through food, and then that energy fuels the malignant cells in the breast to then spread and develop in the body. But I would encourage that the individual who asked this question to do a little bit more research on it and perhaps ask an expert, because again, I am not an expert and I want to make sure that we're giving the most and accurate information in relation to the question.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The second question that I have for you is, are there any associations between stroke and one's age?
So yes, typically there is a common perhaps misconception around thinking that older adults are more at risk for stroke, which is true, but we have seen, especially in more recent years, younger individuals having stroke or having a stroke. For instance, when we talk about women who are pregnant and perhaps developing hypertension when they're pregnant or during their pregnancy, and then having the stroke after their pregnancy because their blood pressure was not under control during their pregnancy. So that's when we do see younger adults experiencing a stroke. Also, I'll just go back to the lifestyle behaviors. If an individual is younger, in which we've also seen individuals who are younger who are developing hypertension at a younger age, and they're not controlling their blood pressure, they are then going to be at an increased risk of a stroke. And going back to just the importance of controlling one's blood pressure, there are many lifestyle changes that we can do and engage in to control our blood pressure, like diet, eating healthy fruits and vegetables, limiting sodium. I will say that and Lacey can attest to this too, that the amount of sodium that is put into processed food to preserve those foods are very high, and that directly impacts blood pressure because it impacts how the blood is flowing through the veins and how hard the heart has to work to push the blood through the veins. And so I will say, so having a healthy diet, reducing sodium, and then also getting physical activity, that will help control one's blood pressure. And if you do have hypertension, I wholeheartedly, will advocate that you reach out to your doctor and that you're taking your medication and that you're taking steps to control blood pressure, because having uncontrolled hypertension for a very long time leads to a lot of long-term effects. So it kind of goes back to having a healthy lifestyle and being able to control blood pressure from an early age.
Perfect. Thank you so much for answering those 2 questions. The last 2 questions that I have here are for Celia. The first question is a mental telehealth visit as effective as an in-person session?
So in our experience, what we've realized is that yes, it pretty much is. And what's nice, it's also creating more access to additional clinicians, which is something that we're in dire need of.
Thank you. And the last question we have is, what mental health resources are available for the community, especially in the context of this pandemic?
We have virtual support groups that are going on for peers, for families, and for parents. And those go on, and our website has the list of all the support groups there, as well as we have a warm line. We have a peer check-in line as well. So we're calling some of the peers that, so again, social distancing does not mean that we're not social. So we're trying to continue to keep the conversation going and the resources, because isolation is never good.
Thank you for that. I don't see any questions in the chat box, so I'm going to hand it back over to Robert.
Thank you, Brianna. And again, a big thank you to our presenters today for joining us. Really appreciate you taking time out of your days to educate us. And a big thank you to our audience members as well for joining us. So just as a reminder, the Healthy Happens Here webinar series occurs monthly with 3 events covering health topics such as nutrition, mental health, tobacco cessation, and chronic disease self-management. Stay tuned for our November Healthy Happens Here events, as we will be sharing information on these events shortly. We also want to announce the virtual Community Health Improvement Plan meeting on Friday, October 30th, 2020 from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. For this event, we are inviting leaders, public health professionals, and key community members like you to learn more about resident health, trends in health outcomes, and current initiatives. The Community Health Improvement Plan meeting is designed to bring community members and organizations together to take a collaborative approach to prioritizing and addressing the needs of the community. The purpose of this event will also be to review the current status of the Community Health Improvement Plan. Those in attendance will have a comprehensive look at the data and help develop strategies and plans for policy, systems, and environmental changes to improve community health and overall quality of life in our region. Please sign up by clicking on the link that will be posted in the chat box. Finally, please make sure to visit healthymiamidade.org and follow us on social media for updates. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.